the last day at MGM National Harbor, one of my favorite places to play poker, so I'm a little bit sad about that. But we have one last chance to make something happen this trip. We're playing a $600 tournament today. It's a one day. Let's try to make the money today and probably just win it too. It'd be nice to go home with some hardware, so let's get after it. The very first hand I play in this tournament definitely sets a tone. I open king queen suited from under the gun 1, and it folds to the button who 3-bets me to 8,000. I fold, and he shows me a 6.
Savage.
Okay, guess I'm gonna have to battle. And battle I did, because in the very next hand, we're gonna play small blind versus big blind. The small blind limps, and I check my option in the button with 4-6 suited. The flop comes ace king 3 with 2 spades, but it goes check check. The turn comes the king of diamonds, and now my opponent bets 1 big blind. I make the call, and the river is the 4 of hearts, so we totally break our flush, but we do end up with a pair. She bets 2,200, and I think it over before making the call again, to which she says,
I have a 4? Fair.
It always feels really good to have a bluff catch go your way, because God knows I've looked like an idiot one too many times doing that exact thing. But something that definitely feels a little bit better is at the very next orbit, it folds to the small blind once again, and she says,
honestly, I'm just during like small blind big blind.
That's fair.
That's the only time I play with you.
Given that I had 3-5 offsuit, I'm more than happy to take a walk here. But I'm pretty sure I just called a whale. Honestly valid though. Then after all that work I had done to cultivate an action image, our table breaks.
Table's breaking. Great. Maybe I'll be at Branson's table.
Hi, Nemesis B.
Ooh.
We get our new seat cards, and I look around to see if there's any juicy tables, and there's a ton. I even see this massive fish named Branson sitting across the room, so I'm praying to be seated at his table. Shortly after, registration is officially closed. At this point, there are 56 people left in this tournament, but only 18 make the money.
What is up top? I can't even say. Damn, 8K from 1 to 2 is... Whew, I guess you just better get 1 then.
This means we have a long way to go, and we're really short stacked right now. But it's never as easy as just getting a double outright, is it? Because in the next hand, I open up ace 10 from early position to 4,000. Only the cutoff makes the call, and we go heads up to a flop of king queen 3 rainbow. That's gonna be a flop that definitely favors our range, so we bet 5,000, and unfortunately our opponent makes the call. Obviously I was hoping for a fold, but when he calls, now I have to navigate the turn. But when the turn comes the 4 of clubs and we pick up the nut flush draw, I don't want to slow down. I bet 10,000 now, and he says,
Abby, I don't know if I want to be in your video or not.
I don't know either. I don't know what you have. If I was bluffing.
okay, soul read. Good thing I'm not playing against that guy. But I guess I won't be playing against any of them, because then my table breaks for the second time today.
Table changing again. Let's see what we can make happen at this other table. I kind of like this table though. Everyone is really nice. I'm gonna like the next table even more.
Admittedly, I'm doing a little prayer that I can be seated next to the biggest fish in the room, Branson. But again, my request has been denied by the poker gods. However, as I make my way to my new seat, I take my chips out of the rack and I'm putting the rack below the table. But while I'm down there, I see an empty $5,000 band. That means that this actually might be a really good table, because that's a lot of rebuys for a $600 event. But good table or not, some hands just play themselves. Like this next one, when I open pocket aces under the gun to 5K, and both the button and the big blind call. The flop comes 7-8-3 rainbow, and when the big blind checks to me, I bet 7,000. Before the button makes it 16,000. The big blind folds, and if the button has a better hand, I'm gonna need to see it. I go all in, and he makes the call. Thank gosh though, he only has a pair of 8s. And when the turn comes a king and the river comes a 7, that means that we've managed to dodge all of his outs and secure a nice double. Then my table breaks for the 3rd time, and at this point I'm just 100% playing musical chairs. However, I do get my wish from before and am seated at Branson's table. That's a good thing, but the problem is I'm short and these blinds are quick as hell. It's a one-day tournament, which means we're gonna play to a winner tonight. So we have to be all in a lot. We are getting a couple jams through, but to be totally honest, I'd have preferred to call in some of these situations. But then I did something I didn't expect. Instead of going all in and forcing my opponents to make a decision, I'm calling off someone else's all in. I'm in the big blind with King 7 of clubs. It folds to the small blind, who's also chip leader at this point by a mile. She goes all in and I'm in the tank. Because I've been really trying to study recently, I know that in theory this is the call. But I still take my time with the decision because I'm trying to analyze whether or not I need to deviate. What that means is that for how many big blinds I have, in theory, she could be jamming as wide as Queen 5 offsuit profitably. But is she finding the jam with Queen 5 offsuit? At the end of the day, I decide that we need to go for it. We make the call for 8 big blinds, but she has Ace 10 offsuit, so we're gonna need some help. The flop is deuce 6-8 with 1 club. This means that if we don't hit a pair, we need to go perfect on the turn and river in order to win this hand. The turn comes the 5 of clubs, giving us a straight and flush draw. And you'll never believe this, but the river is a 4.
Oh, straight. Wow.
Now, I'm definitely a lot happier, but I'm still not deep stacked. I look at the tournament clock and I see that there's 27 people left and 18 make the money with $20,000 up top. I want to go as deep as I possibly can in this tournament. And my plan to do so is simple. I'm going to look to sense weakness and strike. Like this hand, for example, when this guy checks 2 streets and I have 0 showdown. But when my opponent has not shown any strength, I choose to bet big, even though it's risking a lot of my stack at that point in order to get a fold. And honestly, this shows a lot of growth for me. Because before, I would probably have just sat back and waited to get a good hand that I could possibly double up with. That strategy relied a lot on fate. But I'm here trying to play with skill. But I'll admit, this tournament has been a little bit difficult because I keep moving tables. This means that I'm being put with new opponents constantly, which makes it kind of hard for me to get in the swing of things. But this time, I know someone at my table. I get seated next to Phil.
All right.
You
Thank
just missed me punting off whatever that is.
Hey, seems like it worked out.
I'd rather have all that.
Hey, fair.
Your predecessor got him twice. He had
Ooh.
queens at ace king.
Well, don't foreshadow anything here.
I would never.
21 people left, 18 make the money, and min cash is like 1,200 or something? 1,300, even better. Let's try to do that. We do have 10 big blinds though. Gonna need a spin.
At this point in the tournament, the name of the game is patience. I am a bit restricted on my moves because the player to my right is unfortunately a deeper stack. And every single time it folds to him in the small blind, he jams on my big blind. Annoying, but at this stage in the tournament, I can't fight back. I need to let the shorties bust. And I still have a lot of life.
There's currently 20 people left, which means that there's 7 people at that table, 7 people at this table, and 6 people at our table, which is not super ideal when you're a short stack, but we have some deep stacks at our table too, so maybe we'll just have it. Maybe a good time for it. Soft bubble, gonna need it.
Blinds go up again, and now we're at the 8K big blind level. It folds to the small blind, who's that deeper stack I mentioned before, and he jams, just like I expected him to.
You and me, my friend. I never look too, because I know it's coming, so then I gotta look.
I look down at King 9 of hearts.
Ooh, that's pretty. Kinda need a double, honestly.
I'm looking around at the other stacks and realize that there's only one person shorter than me right now. The problem is, we're 2 people away from the money. Given the fact that I think he's doing this super wide, King 9 of hearts is actually looking like a premium.
Hold up, let me do a little math.
I also count my chip stack again and realize that I only have 6 big blinds at the moment. So, I put it in.
Let's go.
Thanks.
I'm up against Jack 7 offsuit, but if he makes a pair and I don't, I'll be eliminated from the tournament. The flop is definitely above average, giving me top pair, but the turn leaves him open-ended. Thank God though, the river is a 10, and he completely misses, which means that we secure a double up on the soft bubble.
Okay, we are hand for hand, so the next person to us doesn't make the money, and everyone else does. Give me a ooh!
Hey.
Things were written in stone.
One thing that I love about Pat is that he always brings humor to stressful situations. The thing that I hate about Pat is that he always finds me during stressful situations. At that moment, I notice not necessarily a big hand, but a very important hand brewing from across the table. The cutoff jams 3 big blinds, and it folds to fill in the big blind.
36, 31. That's really tough. I think I'm stuck with just about anything, honestly. Yeah, I gotta give it a try.
He makes the call with Jack 6 offsuit, and he's up against Ace 10. But he manages to flop a 6 to win it and move the rest of us into the money.
We are officially in the money because this guy wailed out. Thank you,
You're
Whale.
welcome. You're welcome.
Everybody say thank you,
The
Whale.
whaliest. This is
Thank you,
the
Whale.
We made it.
With that last person busting, we're officially down to the final 2 tables, which means that the 3rd table breaks, and even better news, Branson gets moved to our table.
Uh-oh. Big time bozo just sat down. Terminator over there.
Let's go.
When we were seated together earlier, we didn't really crash, but that would soon change. Now that we're officially in the money, my friend Phil shares some wisdom that he learned from Chris Moneymaker himself.
What'd you say?
Don't be afraid to look stupid.
Who said that?
You're playing to win. Chris Moneymaker.
He's got.
That's why I called him the second pair on a 3 flush, 3 Broadway board.
That's the reason,
Embarrass
right?
him.
You didn't get any, any coaching before that hand at all?
There was this chick. What did she say?
Was
Oh,
it?
Yeah.
Super original and creative name. I think Abby Poker told you
Abby
that,
Poker.
right?
That's the one.
Yeah,
She
she's.
said, don't be afraid to call Moneymaker a little light.
Where's my cut?
I'll be honest, I'm keen to take that advice. Trust me, as a vlogger who posts hands on the internet for a living, I'm not afraid to look stupid. Phil and I are having a great time, but as the tournament progresses, each hand becomes more and more important. Also, now that we're in the money, we're about to see a lot of all-ins. And being on the right side of those will be crucial to securing a deep run. That said, poker is a fun game. And while I do want to enjoy whatever this run will bring me, I also can't be afraid to take spots that I think are good, even if that means that the run may come to an end. Just like in this next hand, when the hijack opens to 20,000, the button makes the call, and I call as well in the big blind with King 4 of spades. We flop some backdoors, but at face value, absolutely nothing. But after I check, both of my opponents check really quickly. And this is where the hand gets interesting. The turn is a 5, which pairs the board. I need to be chipping up at this point in the tournament, and I'm also the one with the most 5s in my range. So I lead out now for 30k, and both of the other players snap fold. Sure, this is a small pot in terms of big blinds, but it had a huge impact on my stack. I started the hand with 120,000, but I made the decision to risk 30k in order to add an additional 80k to my stack. And I did this just by taking it down. There was no showdown here. Do I think I had the best hand? Not necessarily, but by denying equity from my opponents and not letting them see a river, I took down this pot without showdown. I rendered whatever they have in their hands completely irrelevant. Winning hands without showdown is definitely good, but sometimes I don't mind getting to showdown. In the very next hand, it folds to me in the small blind and I limp ace 5 offsuit. Phil checks in the big blind and we go heads up to a flop of ace 6-6. I bet 1 big blind, he calls. In the turn is another 6, giving me a boat. I check, trying to set the trap for him to bet, but he checks behind. At least that means I'm pretty sure he doesn't have a 6. The river is a 3, and at this point, I just have a mandatory bet. I make it 25,000, and he thinks it over before making the call.
Trying to knock my head off.
I have an ace.
Golly. Right there.
Thanks.
It really was.
I had to.
At this point in the tournament, we had been playing for around 7 hours. But because it was a one-day event, we didn't have a dinner break. So I called in some backup.
My hero. Thank you.
So 5%? You're right. I'll sell it for 1. You're welcome.
Uh-oh. That was supposed to be so smooth, and then you trip on the chair.
As he's walking away, he loses some major aura points. So close, Corey. But anyway, back to the tournament. I'm in my own world, eating my apple and for the most part minding my own business, when I overhear a bit of a commotion at the table. There's talks of a misdeal because, long story short, the dealer gave Branson, who's on the button, a 3rd card on accident. But because he's able to identify which card would have actually been dealt to Branson versus the one that accidentally got thrown, he takes back the incorrect card, which will now be the burn card before the flop, and action resumes as is. It's at this moment that I look down at my hand and realize that I have pocket queens. It folds around to the love of my life, who's really just this absolutely adorable old man, and he jams for 4 big blinds. I'm already a little bit sad about having to make the call and potentially eliminate the sweetest guy ever. But then I'm even sadder because Branson goes all in the small blind, and I cover him. Obviously, I'm never folding here, so I make the call, and it turns out the button has pocket 4s and Branson has ace-7 offsuit. The flop is clean for pocket queens. It's 10 jack deuce rainbow. The turn is definitely less clean, giving my opponent a set, but the river's a 7, which means I'll lose the tiny main pot, but win the massive side pot to eliminate Branson.
I'm sorry. I know.
Obviously sad to see Branson go, but I'll admit I'm also kind of excited because for the first time today, I have raising chips. So I open up 7-8 of diamonds to 25,000 in the cutoff, and only the big blind makes the call. The flop is amazing, giving me trips. But what's even better is that now my opponent leads for 55,000. Not much to do here, but make the call. The turn's a 9, and my opponent checks it over to me. At this point, my SPR is 1, which pretty much just means that my stack is the same size as the pot. So looking to get value from an ace, I go all in. But unfortunately my opponent folds. At this point, the sweetest angel busts, which I genuinely hated to see. But on the other hand,
Guys, we just made the final table. There are 9 people left. We have over 2,000 locked up, and we're fighting for 20,000 for first. So, and I also made my ICM. I made the final table picture, which I'm so excited about. You're never gonna hear the end of this, let me tell you.
at this point, there are only 8 people standing in the way of me and $20,000 for first place. I'm focusing on living in the moment, and I'm so excited. But I'll admit, I'm also really nervous. This is a big spot for me, and there's a lot of money up top. So I also felt a lot of pressure to lock in and play my very best poker. The other thing making me a bit nervous is that I'm definitely not the most seasoned veteran when it comes to final tables. And even though I have been studying recently, final table strategy is completely different. And what's more is that the stacks are pretty much even at this point, bar from, of course, the 2 deeper stacks on my right and on my left. All this to say, my plan was to be patient before I would inevitably have to strike. The blinds are up to 25,000 and Phil opens under the gun to 50,000. It folds to me, I jam ace queen offsuit and he folds. And then the very next hand, I open up pocket 5s and just get straight folds. So I am chipping up, but because of the fact that the stacks are so even and the payouts are so exponential, when my table starts talking about a potential chop, I'm open to listening.
They're talking about a chop right now, and if we did chop, it would be better than 3rd place money. So I'm like totally in, especially because I'm like on the shorter side. There's one player at the table who doesn't want to do it. I hate multi-way steps. It makes me feel like such a but like I can't say no to that. You know what I mean? Like I would love to win 7K.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Yeah, but until then, we gotta find our spots. So
Yeah.
back in 4 minutes. Bro, I hate when they color me up sometimes when I'm kind of short because then my stack looks so small. My God.
Guys, I swear this is a real thing. The average player is not accustomed to just guessing how many chips you have in your stack, especially when you're playing live. But when you color up, it makes it so much easier for them, which is sometimes not a very good thing when you're short stacked. It removes some of that fold equity, you know what I mean? Then we play an absolutely crucial hand. It folds to me on the button, and I look down at pocket 3s off of 10 big blinds. I go all in, and the small blind pretty quickly isolates. At this point, all I can do is pray that we're flipping. But he has pocket 7s, so we are absolutely dominated. Luckily for me though, we do manage to flop a 3, and the run out is clean as can be. So we managed to stay alive with 6 people left. Then, as I'm racking up my chips from that super important hand, I turn around and notice a bit of a rail has started to form.
Look at my rail. They're so nice. I'm claiming them as my rail. They might be sweating other people too, but... Oh, yes. Just so everyone knows, the job value is 8,600. Yeah, something tells me.
Are you the only product with them?
He's nothing if not consistent.
Gramps is definitely a savage for that one, but he's right. When stacks are as even as they are, it's genuinely anyone's game. So it makes a lot of sense to consider a chop, but that decision is not unanimous, so we keep playing. In the next hand, it's slightly less sweaty, but still very intense. It folds to me in the small blind, and I look down at ace-7 offsuit. I go all in for 400,000, and the chip leader in the big blind is in the tank. That's realistically a good thing because it means that I'm probably ahead, but honestly, I'm still nervous as I mean, I have a very vulnerable hand, even with an ace. He ends up making the call with ace-4 offsuit. The flop comes very clean in the form of 10-8 deuce rainbow. The turn's a 3, which means I now need to dodge a 4 or a 5, but the river's a queen, securing us a massive double right when we needed it the most. I'm thrilled, and honestly, I'm also chip leader now. Crazy, but we were that close in chips that even one pot can sway the entire chip distribution. But there is one player that's relatively close to me in chips. In this next hand, it folds to me in the button, and I open ace of hearts, 7 of clubs to 60,000. Before the player that I mentioned before who's close to me in chips makes the call in the big blind. The flop is an interesting one. It's ace-8-5 all clubs. He checks to me, and with top pair and a flush draw, I bet 45,000 here. But my opponent makes the call. The turn is a board pairing 8 of diamonds, and he checks to me once more before I choose to play a bit of pot control here and check it back. The river is the 4 of hearts, which really shouldn't have changed either one of our hands. And now my opponent bets 150,000. My gut instinct is to call, but the problem is I have a bluff catcher at this point. His sizing doesn't tell me much, as I'd expect him to bet the same way with a naked king of clubs, for example. Because I had to call 150,000 in order to win the entire pot, which would be around 500, I only have to be good 30% of it. Whatever, I make the call, and he has king deuce of clubs. Probably wasn't getting him to fold that one. After that hand, I have a few chips to win back. So through selective aggression, I'm definitely winning small pots, which feels great, but what feels even better is that Phil, who has since been eliminated, brought us a massive sushi platter. Probably the sushi.
I'm so happy right now. Annoying. It's final table.
The only problem is that sushi was arguably too good. Because while I was only taking bites when I wasn't in a hand, I'll admit, sometimes I did not notice that the previous hand had ended. Oops. But anyway, at this point, there's 4 people remaining in the tournament. So we have $4,600 locked up. But my eyes were set on that top prize of $20,000. We're 4-handed, and again, everyone is pretty much even in chips. In reality, I am the shortest stack, but it's only by a big blind.
There's now a $3,000 pay jump between 4th and 3rd. That's a lot of sushi rolls we're playing for. Good luck, guys.
Then this next hand happens, where the cutoff jams, again, covering me by a big blind, and I look down in the small blind at pocket 7s. This to me is not a snap decision. I figured it was close, but I make sure to take my time, think it over, before deciding that I need to go with it and make the call for my remaining 8 big blinds. The big blind folds, and my heart sinks as I see that he has pocket 8s. We're gonna need a 7 in order to stay alive. The board comes king 10-3, but the turn comes an 8. We're drawing dead, and I am eliminated in 4th place for $4,600.
Damn, that sucks. Pocket 8s, man, they're taking everybody out. They're taking out Phil, they took out me. Just kidding, but we looked it up in the Wizard. Wizard says it's good. Unfortunately, he had a better hand, and I did not improve. So that's how it goes sometimes. In for 600, out for 4.5K. That is going to do it for me today. And actually at the Moneymaker Tour. Pretty good way to end, though. I'm happy.